Hey everyone! So, we're going to read another book about honeybees today. And this one is called The Life and Times of the Honeybee. And I hope that you love it. And I think it's really interesting because it talks about things that I have not seen in any of our other books. So, let's read together. A honey of a bee. For thousands of years, the honeybee has been one of our most valuable insects. It has supplied people with honey for sweetening foods and with beeswax for candles and many other useful items. In addition, the honeybee has helped farmers all over the world to increase their fruit and vegetable harvests. Rock paintings in Spain and Africa show that people collected honey over 8,000 years ago. Beeswax candles have a high melting point, 146 degrees Celsius. Other candles melt at lower temperatures and they may wilt as they burn. This rock painting shows a woman gathering honey. It was found near Valencia, Spain, and dates to around 6000 BC. Wow. Fruits such as apples would not grow in large numbers without honeybees to pollinate the blossoms. Bees live in dark places. In the wild, they often live in hollow trees. Through the ages, people have housed honeybees in carved out logs, clay pots, and straw skeps. Today, most beekeepers raise them in box-like wooden hives. Home sweet home. Honeybees live in a large group called a colony. Each colony occupies its own hive. Although there may be between 10,000 and 60,000 bees in a colony, there are only 3 types of bees. Go ahead and tell me what those 3 types are right now. Good job. The workers are the smallest bees and they are female. Thousands of them perform chores in the hive. They make honey, clean the hive, feed the larvae, and build the wax comb where all the bees live. Workers are the only honeybees that visit flowers. Approximately 100 drones live in each colony. They are the male bees and they mate with the queen. The largest bee is the queen. Each colony has only one queen and her most important function is to lay eggs. This is a cool page that shows you different spaces of the hive inside the tree. It says up here there's a worker storing food, workers repairing honeycomb. Here's the queen and all of her subjects. And it says in warm weather a healthy queen lays 1,000 to 1,500 eggs a day. Her court is formed of 12 workers which guard, clean, and feed her. Here is a worker and a drone and a worker feeding larvae, and then these, as you guys know, are the queen cells where the queen eggs go. This says drones are so lazy that often they don't even feed themselves. A worker has to feed them. So crazy. The comb is made of thousands of six-sided wax cells. Honey fills the cells at the top and circle the edge of the comb. Bees eat honey for energy. Pollen cells curve below the honey cells. Pollen is the powder bees take from flowers. They eat it for their protein, which helps make their muscles stronger. And then the brood cells are way at the bottom. From egg to bee. Like many insects, a honeybee grows in 4 stages: egg, larva, pupa, and adult. The bee changes dramatically from one stage to the next. Although all bees develop in the same 4 stages, the time it takes each type of bee to grow is different. Queens grow the fastest in 16 days. Workers mature in 21 days, and drones take 24 days. Young worker bees constantly care for and feed the larvae. They feed royal jelly to the queen larvae. They feed bee milk to worker and drone larvae for the first 3 days and bee bread after that. Royal jelly is a milky yellow syrup that young worker bees secrete from glands inside their heads. It's high in protein. Secrete means like it kind of sweats out of their skin. So it's kind of like bee sweat. Huh. Bee milk is similar to royal jelly, but it's not as nutritious. It too comes from glands in the worker bee's head. Bee bread is a mixture of honey and pollen. The worker bee. When a worker crawls out of her cell, she's already fully grown. Even though she is 1/2 inch long and weighs only 1 out of 250 ounces, she contributes more than any other type of bee to the daily survival of the colony. Now, I like this page because it tells us specifically about the types of her body. A honeybee has 2 different kinds of eyes. 2 compound eyes with over 3,000 lenses each allow the bee to see ultraviolet light, which is invisible to the human eye. With their ultraviolet light vision, bees can see which flowers are full of nectar. And then the 3 simple eyes act as light sensors. Bees can see the sun even when it's hidden by clouds. Antennae detect scent like a nose does, and they are used as feelers in the dark, which we know their hive is dark, so that's pretty important. A bee uses her front legs, kind of like arms, to move flower parts and to dust off her antennae. A bee uses her middle legs to brush pollen out of the thousands of hairs she has covering her body. Pollen baskets on the outside of the back leg are for storing pollen. A worker bee's body is covered with branched hairs that trap pollen. Beeswax is secreted on the underside of the bee's abdomen, right here. Kind of like we were saying, it's like kind of like sweat coming out of your body. A bee can fly more than 12 miles an hour going forward and backwards and sideways. And a honeybee has 2 stomachs. We've kind of talked a little bit about this. The honey sac is where a bee stores nectar that will be made into honey. The midgut is where she digests her food. The busy days of a house bee. Now, we know a lot of this information already, and I don't want this video to be too long, so I'm going to skip a few pages. We know that a house bee is in charge of cleaning and taking care of the babies, and then also taking care of the queen, and then also making wax for the honeycomb, and sometimes they have to guard the entrance too. Then it says the days of the field bee, and we know that when a bee graduates to getting to be out flying around in nature where we see them, we know that their job is to collect nectar and pollen, and that they also have to bring water back to the hive. Okay, this page is about how honeybees make honey. Making honey requires field bees and house bees. A field bee collects the nectar. When she returns to the hive, the house bees take over the process. They turn the nectar into honey. First, she spots a flower with her ultraviolet vision to make sure that it has lots and lots of nectar. Then she lands on the petals and searches with her antennae for the sweet smelling nectar. She sucks up the nectar into her honey sac, but she does not eat it. It just stays there, and when her honey sac is full, she just flies back to the hive. When she gets back to the hive, she transfers nectar to a house bee, tongue to tongue. So it's kind of like if I had a piece of gum and I spit it out and gave it to you, and then you chewed it up and then spit it out, and I put it back in my mouth, and then I chewed it up and spit it out and then gave it back to you, and we'd just go back and forth, which is totally disgusting, and I don't think you should ever do that, but that's how bees transfer the honey to each other, or the nectar to each other when they get back to the hive. So, Then the house bee puts a droplet of nectar on the roof of a honey cell where it begins to dry. During the next couple of days, other house bees fan their wings over the honeycomb, helping the nectar dry some more so that all the moisture can leave it and it can become honey. Then they cap the honey cells with a thin layer of wax and let it sit, and that's when it turns into honey after it thickens and thickens. So interesting. This page is about the honeybee dances that they use to communicate where exactly all the nectar is. So it says, field bees show other field bees where flowers are by dancing on the honeycomb in their hive. After the field bee has given the nectar to a house bee, she begins to walk rapidly in a circular pattern. Other bees gather and touch the dancing field bee with their antennae. By smelling the dancing bee, the other bees can tell what type of flowers she has visited. By feeling her movement, they can learn how far away the flowers are and sometimes even their location. There are several bee dances, but the most common ones are the round dance and the tail wagging dance. The round dance just goes round and round in a circle, and the waggle dance goes kind of like in an infinity symbol in a figure 8, but in the middle when they're crossing, they waggle, 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 waggle. And it's very specific. It shows the location of where the flowers are and how far away they are. Super amazing. This is one of my favorite pages. It's all about the different types of honey, and instead of reading it, I'm going to take a picture of the page and put it on Seesaw so you can read all about that. A honeybee calendar. A beehive is a busy place all year long. In January, during the winter, workers stay inside the hive and huddle around the queen, vibrating against one another for warmth. And that also reminds me of the National Geographic article we read, because that's what they were doing. They were vibrating to make the hornet so hot so that it would die. Crazy. February, the queen bee starts laying eggs. In March, on the first day of the year when temperature is warm, worker bees fly out and begin looking for food. In April, worker bees collect nectar and pollen from early blooming flowers like cherry blossoms. In May, in late spring to early summer, is swarming season. Now this is super interesting. When a new queen is born, the old queen and about half the workers usually swarm out of the hive and have to look for a new home. In June, worker bees collect nectar and pollen from white clover. This is the most popular type of honey that you will ever find in the store. In July, beekeepers collect most honey. In August, workers prepare for winter by storing honey around the brood nest and filling in cracks and repairing the hive. In September, the drones are pushed out of the hive to die because they're no longer needed and they eat too much honey. Isn't that crazy? In October, during their last flights of the season, bees gather nectar from goldenrod, asters, and other autumn flowers. In November, the queen stops laying eggs. As a result, her abdomen, which produces the eggs, may shrink. In December, once again, the workers crowd around the queen. During one winter, a honeybee colony eats over 50 pounds of honey. So if you ever become a beekeeper and you're collecting honey from your hive, you better leave enough for them to eat over the winter. Trying to see what are the other pages that I really wanted to read. Let's see, I'll read this one. Actually, you know what? We read about that already. All right. Today, honeybees fly on every continent except Antarctica. Wherever clover is scattered across a field or wildflowers brighten a hillside, honeybees collect nectar for honey and pollen for their larvae. Buzzing sounds fill the air and add new chapters to the life and times of the honeybee. And that is the end of our book. I hope you thought it was awesome. See you later.